Back in 2023, Embark Studios showed off an alpha test trailer for Arc Raiders, and the funny thing is the response was brutal. It was scathing. That's because 2 years earlier, they had promised something completely different. Essentially, Monster Hunter with giant robots built by the devs who quit making Battlefield. But this trailer, well, it was a PvP extraction shooter, just like Tarkov, just like every other trend chaser, and around that time, the Cycle Frontier shut down. It actually shut down that same week. Marathon was also revealed as yet another extraction game. So in a way, the timing could not have been worse. A lot of players felt betrayed. This game seemed, per the comments, so doomed. Well, it's safe to say that by now, everything regarding this game's fate has changed. Right now, Arc Raiders is doing something that no one really predicted. It hit the 5th best reviewed game this year over on OpenCritic, higher than even Silksong in its score, although that was before Eurogamer dropped their rather controversial little 2-star review, which did take it down the rankings. But I think you get the point, and it's all now spiraled into sales surging, such that now, just under a fortnight after the game's launch, it has passed 4 million copies, and that's absolutely staggering in this particular moment's hyper-competitive shooter market. There's COD, obviously, on the horizon. Of course, there's also Battlefield. There's a lot of things competing for people's money, and Arc Raiders is also a premium game. So this is damn impressive, and clearly they have expanded beyond the traditional extraction shooter audience. I mean, we saw that early on when it hit 350k Steam concurrence pretty much on its launch. And to prove how well it would continue doing, on week 2 it hit a Steam peak concurrency of 462,000, which is actually more than Helldivers 2's peak concurrence in Steam. What we can probably all agree on is that extraction shooters have become predictable, and there's 2 dominating flavors within the genre. You've got your milsims like Tarkov, Delta Force, and Greyzone, or your more horror-like experiences. That's things like Hunt Showdown and Forever Winter. And really, every new entry kind of picks a lane there. Milsim or horror, that's kind of been it. Arc Raiders refuses both options. It's third person instead of first. That's fairly different. Players see their character. That's big because it means you feel ownership over your character. Aesthetically, it's cassette punk sci-fi, post-apocalypse. It is bursting with color. There are interesting designs. There are giant robots dominating the landscape that just look awesome. Nothing about those things screams milsim or horror, but Arc still does respect the genre expectations, and it still produces the same emotions within a player. So your shield and health management still matters. Inventory Tetris, which is the best form of inventory management, is still there. And if you are not afraid of those robots, you will very soon learn to be. They are goddamn impressive, even just in how they move. So Arc Raiders has taken the extraction formula and it's made it approachable. It's wrapped it up in something that is entirely different. And the thing is, these changes go far, far deeper than just the aesthetics. And a part of the reason why is actually the development team behind the game and how they've done this. Now, you've probably seen that most of those Learn to Code Quick courses are absolute bollocks. And that's why today's sponsor, Boot.dev, is literally built different. It's built specifically for us, for gamers. Their founder Lane reached out to me years ago because he's a WoW player and he was just starting out. And now, well, he's got over 750,000 students who've completed 33.7 million lessons. Now, I say this stuff having a BEng in computer science, and compared to my experience, man, Boot teaches incalculably better. And it sure doesn't cost what university did. Now, what they teach is back-end development. That's the kind that lands you 100k plus jobs, and they do it through a proper, structured 12-month paced program that is done like a community RPG. Now, you'll learn TypeScript, Go, and Python from the fundamentals through to building real projects. It ain't some learn to code in 2 weeks scam thing that, well, you see, sadly, far too often. Boot teaches the fundamentals that separate professional developers from just, people shipping slop. And what I love is that through their curriculum, you're learning a lot of very, very important languages, a lot of important technologies, but you're also learning some of the soft skills, the real materially important things like, say, actually being in the jobs market. And you're doing fun portfolio pieces, projects, things like, say, building a Pokédex. It's got the sauce. Now, you can get 25% off your first purchase by just going to boot.dev/bellular news. The way to save the most money is to get the annual plan, because if you are not happy, they will refund you on the spot. Embark run another game. It's called The Finals, and it's a game that taught them a brutal lesson about player retention. The Finals was shadow dropped in 2023 to spectacular success. It was kind of stunning in many ways. Just look at the destruction from Battlefield devs. And for a few months, that was amazing. But look at this chart. It absolutely fell off. And it took from that fall off until 2025 for the game to reach profitability again. Now, we can go to the CEO Patrick Soderlund and his explanation of what went wrong when he was talking to the game business. It wasn't one problem. There wasn't enough content in the game. The onboarding wasn't strong enough. The game modes hadn't been explained properly, the menus and UI weren't right. There was no one quick fix to win players back. So in my mind, that essentially means it was a minimum viable product. The core game of the Finals absolutely slapped. That got everyone in, but all of the other things just killed it. Death by many cuts. And with Arc Raiders, we've basically seen that Embark have absorbed every lesson, and they've basically developed the game really slowly. And it's especially crucial for a brand new IP finding its audience. Cough, cough, Concord. But there is a controversial thing that this game is continuing, and it's something that was present in the Finals. That is AI voicing. So whenever you hear voices in this game, yeah, that's actually AI stuff. But basically the way that this is that Embark worked with their actors to do the voices and to train the model. That then leaves Embark basically with these voice models for the different characters, which then means if they need new voice lines, they can basically just crank them out. Now, we don't actually have specifics on the deal that the artists signed, but I think when we look at this, it's fairly obvious why a company would like something like this. So, voice lines, right? They scale absolutely exponentially with character count and map complexity. I've got it in very good authority that, for an example, Overwatch 2 really suffered from just how many goddamn character lines they would have to record for just about any new thing that they would do. Of course, in a game like this, you've got to think about new maps, new POIs, all of that stuff, and how, in the old-fashioned way, yeah, you would just need to get actors back in again and again and again and again. Clearly, Embark does not want to do that. Maybe that's a resourcing thing, maybe it's just development preference, and they just don't want that whole other layer of organization. Obviously, though, not everyone agrees with their solution to this problem. Now, I think it's sometimes been a bit misreported that this is done to not end up paying actors. Of course, in the first instance, it was done with paid actors who literally signed up for this thing to be done. That being said, could it be to help them skip out on future payments for actors? Maybe for those same actors? Yeah, perhaps. And I hope that those actors were able to charge a hell of a premium for allowing the model training and the model use, because that's really the only way I could see it making sense for them. That being said, I do think that Ark's success has not been massively held back by criticism over the AI thing, and broad industry perspective-wise, I think people are going to see Ark's success as evidence that general audiences don't care, at least in the context of a game like this. So really, no matter what way you fall in the issue, I think we can probably agree on what the market and other, game companies will take away from this as a lesson. But to move on, we've got to cover how they've managed to get around the original 2023 complaints that basically were saying this game would be dead on arrival. Now, when we look to the game, we see that the opening gradually unfolds each major concept and system. It's masterful player onboarding. You learn how to behave in the world, no one gets lost, the mission design reinforces collaboration from the start, the achievements literally reward you for extracting with strangers, but then here's where it gets kind of fascinating. And it's as Alinea pointed out when doing their analysis. Ark's design actually addresses the original 2023 complaint. Because you may remember, those players who wanted Monster Hunter with robots were pissed off. They did not want this PvP game. But what we now see is that they've actually got a place in this game as well. And perhaps even to the point where they could feel real vindicated. That's because the biggest barrier to joining an established extraction shooter in 2025 is that the community already has its rules. You've got a codified meta, the player behavior is just kind of locked in. But with Ark, it's new, and we're seeing the standards form in real time. So we've now got people actually arguing whether PvP is hurting the experience or not. That's the funny thing. Embark built a game where hardcore extraction fans and PvE players can coexist. But I think their smartest move for keeping both groups happy, well, it's a real smart one, but it hasn't even launched yet. Right, so extraction shooters share a bit of a fundamental problem, and that is that the core loop is building your power and your mastery, right? You get your loot, you extract, you upgrade, you repeat, but eventually you hit the ceiling, right? You max out your gear, you've got nothing left to chase, and just going out kind of becomes pointless. It means that whenever new content drops, you're maxed out, you just steamroll things, and that ends up being boring for you and miserable for the people that you are steamrolling. And it's a bit of a nightmare for devs to balance, and that's led to a bit of a genre convention that I'd say is a nuclear option. And that's just doing global progression wipes, right? Everyone going back to zero, fresh content, level playing field, and the most engaged players love it. Different genre, but just look at Rust's players. They're another group who kind of love having a fresh grind every new wipe. But if you're not a hardcore of those games, you probably just winced at the idea of months of work being kind of deleted, even if you never reached max gear. I mean, what's the point of starting? Do you just want to live in an endless treadmill? What we know is that that treadmill is totally fine for the hardcores who just love the moment to moment. It seems to be blocking a lot of wide adoption, and that is where Ark gets really interesting. So their solution is called Expeditions. They're 8-week seasons with a choice. If you hit level 20, you unlock new challenges for 8 weeks. If you complete them by week 8, then you choose your fate. And that is to either keep everything, so your gear, your levels, your power, or to wipe voluntarily, meaning you'll lose your levels, lose your skills and your inventory, but keep all of your cosmetics, your account-wide unlocks, plus a small buff to help you in the next regular system. So basically, it's Call of Duty's prestige system being implemented for an extraction shooter. If you need the grind, if the journey really is why you play, you can reset and actually get rewards for that. But if you hate losing your progress and you just want to accumulate like the biggest character there is, then you get to keep your stuff. And both camps basically get to stay happy. That's smart, and it may just be Embark's way to keep this game going in the long run, and basically it not being another version of the finals. Though to really know how it's going to do, we're going to need to see if it will survive the genre's single most important game finally hitting its full release. So far, Ark Raiders has cleared just about every challenge and done something remarkable. In a year packed with great games, it has brought people to a genre that everyone thought was played out, that people were extremely cynical about, and they've made extraction approachable, but they've done that without alienating the hardcore audience. They've found success in an impossibly competitive market, but it could always have risked being a big fish in a small pond. And this is where things will get interesting, because this weekend, the pond will be invaded. It'll be invaded by Escape from Tarkov. It's finally hitting version 1.0, and what that means is its full Steam release. Now, Tarkov is the game that has defined extraction shooters, and now it's about to get its biggest audience ever. It's about to get millions of impressions. It's hard to overstate just how huge Steam is. So, Ark Raiders' entire pitch has been that it's different from Tarkov, right? Different setting, different mechanics, different progression. So much separates these things. So the question then is, whenever Tarkov launches, how many genre veterans are going to go back to that game? That'll be a fairly natural thing. I think we all expect it. But the real question is not whether Ark will lose players to Tarkov. It's whether the mass market for whom Tarkov could just be a little bit too much, it's whether they will stay, and if those people who go off to Tarkov actually decide to come back. Basically, it's if the 2 years of relentless polish will actually make the difference for this game's future. What we do know is it's made a lot of difference for now, because 2 years ago people said this game was basically doomed for becoming an extraction shooter and losing what people thought was its heart. It's been able to get around that, and now we'll need to see if being different enough actually saves it. And I'll tell you what, if it does, number one, we'll learn that extraction really can work, that it can work in PvE, and that it doesn't need to just be horror or milsim stuff. And we'll also learn that polish actually matters. And goddamn would this industry not be better if they took that to heart, and we actually got polish all the time. Because there's another world where Embark pulled a Sony and threw this thing out too late, leaving it to basically just be dead on arrival, like with Concord. And I don't say that to be spicy. I don't say it just to beat the dead horse that is Concord again and again. it seems quality matters, and if you want the industry to change, what you actually need is for that change to lead to success, to lead to more money. Money talks, and this is a situation where the polish is actually translating into money. But I've got even better news. It's a little bit similar, a little bit different, but it's all around the theme of not treating your players like shit actually paying off. And that's what's going on with Jagex and RuneScape. They've just made a really big change. They are stripping out the worst of the monetization because they actually have the numbers to prove that that monetization was actually hurting their bottom line. It was going too far and leading to players just abandoning. So you can learn all about that by watching the next video.